webinar on the topic Dissent and Terror Attack, Reflections on Investigative Agencies. Today, we hope to discuss about communities in India. Communities in India and their voices of dissent has always been characterized as a threat to national integrity by state and central governments alike over the years. These are classified into terror threats when the accused has a Muslim identity, or a Maoist threat when the accused is of a Dalit or Adivasi identity. Indian jails to date are filled with prisoners from these marginalized communities under trial or otherwise. Recent examples may be anti-CA protested related arrests, accusing activists of relations with Northeast Delhi riots, or even the recent arrest in Kerala of a Muslim migrant laborer, accusing relations with international terror organizations. Today's discussion will hopefully shed light on the patterns of such cases, especially under the current Hindu nationalist government, and thus hoping to keep dissent and discussion around these cases alive. Our speakers today are Sharib A Ali and Nihalsing Rathod. Sharib is a co-founder of Quill Foundation, Innocence Network India, and Citizens Against Hate. He is also a Swiss Excellence Scholar with the chair of Political Anthropology in University of Bern, Switzerland. Nihalsing Rathod is a Nagpur-based lawyer and Ambedkarite activist. He is appearing as defense lawyer for several accused in the Elgar Parishad case. He also co-founded Sangarsh Vahini Batke Vimukt Sangarsh Parishad, an organization working for the socio-political rights of nomadic and denotified tribes. Who will be speaking first?
Who's going to speak first? Me?
Anyone can go according to your.
I would say Sharib would be in better position to initiate. And I think Sharib is mute.
You're mute.
Sharib, you're mute.
I was saying, Nihal bhai, if you can talk about the cases and stuff, it may give me an opportunity to generalize towards the end.
All right. See, the only problem is if I start talking about Bhima Koregaon case, I think even the night will fall short to give details of it. लेकिन मैं संक्षेप में बताना चाहूँगा. What language we are going to speak in? Hindi, English? Mix?
We prefer English, but Hindi is also fine. It's according to.
क्योंकि मेरी दोनों भी भाषाएं दुरुस्त नहीं है. So the thing is, the Bhima Koregaon case, as we know, came to be as an initiated in 2018. It is subsequent to one Yalgar Parishad, or a program that was held in Pune, wherein people and activists from across the spectrum gathered, and they spoke of necessity of unity amongst marginal sections of the society. And very importantly, it was against the RSS and BJP propaganda that goes on. And then one of the part of the program was also to take a pledge that they will not vote for BJP or RSS. And then on the very second day, there happens, there is this program where people come every year to pay their homage to certain matas in Bhima Koregaon, again next to Pune, where people had gathered, and then they were assaulted by certain people that led to a huge riot across the state. And initially it was said, or rather even police version and the public version was the same, that there were a couple of Hindutva organizations which were involved in carrying out this assault. There were evidences, affidavits filed in the Supreme Court by the police department also revealed that these Hindutva forces stage managed this attack, created this statewide volatile situation. Then there were documentary evidences, there were CDRs, there were eyewitnesses as well. However, by about mid-April 2018, story changes, and suddenly certain raids are carried out across the country, and more particularly in Delhi, Mumbai, Pune, and Nagpur, attacking certain activists and alleging that these were the people who carried out, or who rather were mastermind behind this program, and the agenda was to then create violence and overthrow government. Now, as it happens, thereafter on 6th of June, these people were arrested, and first set of people who were picked up in the first round were like Advocate Surendra Gadling. He's been one of the anti-terror law practitioner, a very successful lawyer, and an Ambedkarite activist. Then there was Shoma Sen, Mahesh Raut, an activist who's been working in interiors of Gadchiroli and trying to speak against, or rather raising his voice stronger against mining and other things. He was successful in organizing Gram Sabhas and bringing them together to even contest elections. Then there was Sudhir Dhole, an Ambedkarite activist who was released in 2013 by another court in UAPA case only. However, at that time, the court was kind enough to note down certain things about Dhole, saying that these type of people deserve award, they deserve rewards, and they don't deserve jail, because what they are doing is social service. And then they picked up one person from Delhi, that is Rona Wilson, who has been who has dedicated his life for prisoners' right and things. What happens is the story gets a very absurd turn. They claim that these people were plotting to assassinate Prime Minister Modi in Rajiv Gandhi type assassination, and then certain letters are leaked to media wherein it appears as if these people are conversing and they are uh, making as in preparing for various programs or trying to instigate riots, trying to hatch some conspiracies. And on the basis of that, they initially arrested 5 people. Then it seems uh, their desire to implicate more people shoot up, and then they again arrested. They tried to arrest another 5 people, 6 people. Uh, of course, they received certain jolt. High Court, Supreme Court cases happened. Gautam Navlakha, Anil Tumble, all these people were there. At that time, they could not arrest some of the people. Ultimately, they were arrested recently. And as of now, we see that there were in total 11 people who were arrested till April 2020. And recently, members of Kabir Kalam Manch, who are the folk singers, or Shahir as we know them, excellent artist. They were arrested, and very prominently and importantly, the thing was they were called up as witnesses by NI, interrogated for a couple of days earlier, and later on they were again called up in this month on 4th of September. And there they were told that either you give 164 statement, that is a statement before a magistrate, admitting that they are Maoist, admitting that they had gone to forest area, and again admitting, or rather making a statement that all these arrested persons are Maoists, they are party members, and they are involved in such type of activities. To which these people took a firm stand that they will not make any false deposition, they will not implicate any people, and they will prefer to face the consequences, but they will not lie. And that is the with that stand, they decided to get themselves arrested after giving them time to reflect for on 2 or 3 occasions. They were arrested on 7th of September. And another activist from the same group, Jyoti Jagtap, who was virtually to be seen nowhere, literally to be seen nowhere, she was arrested again on 8th of June. So right now the tally is of 15 people. What we have learned, as in what the sense that we have as a lawyer, or as a person who's also been named in the case, is that they are trying to get people to give or implicate each other, and if they don't implicate each other, then the arrest is imminent. So we know that Professor Hani Babu, who refused to give any 164 statement, and as his wife later on cleared also that It was his refusal to give 164 statement implicating other professors of Delhi University that he came to be arrested. And this one case with the two artists from Kabir Kala Manch, whose case we are fighting, and we are going to the High Court tomorrow itself on this issue. The pattern that appears very clearly is that the investigating agencies have been given a conclusion. They have been given an answer, or they've been given as to what their investigation needs to show, and to show that they are taking or they are resorting to lies and deceits and fabrication. We know earlier in this case only the fabricated statement of a retired judge of Supreme Court, uh, to the extent that the retired judge had to come out, take a press conference, and make a clear statement that he had not given any such deposition to the police authorities, and it's completely false. So it is from that moment, and as we know, for a reason, all the letters that are claimed to be correspondence between the people, between arrested persons, we know all these correspondences are absolute lie. They were never there on the computer. That is not the language they write. That is not the way Maoist functions. That is not the way in which some people conspiring to assassinate none other than His Highness the Prime Minister will write the conspiracy plot. So what I feel is Yalgar Parishad case or Bhima Koregaon case was basically a start, uh, a program, or rather their experiment to understand to what extent they can go by fabricating things, to what extent they can implicate people and keep them behind bars on the basis of false and forged evidences, and then give it a public or create a media sensation as to how dangerous these people are, and then put judiciary also in a tight corner, that they cannot go or they cannot show any sympathy or judicious consideration to these people because these are the anti-national people, and then try and build as big a charge sheet as possible. Like in Elgar Parishad case, as of now, the charge sheet stands at some 12,000 pages, and we are sure Yanai will be coming up with another 8-9,000 pages that will make it 20,000 pages charge sheet. So create bulky documents, create fake evidences, make stock witnesses, or bring witnesses those can depose in the manner they like, and on that basis create such a public notion, public feeling, that you would be seen as an enemy of the society than being an activist. So this is what the pattern I felt is there in Bhima Koregaon case with respect to investigating agencies uh, working. I also have one more thing to add in this. There were occasions where riots happen even today, but then one could clearly go and see in the fact findings that it was the police departments or security forces communal bias that led to aggravation of the situation, or that led to more damages and harm to the property of minorities. Here in this case, in Bhima Koregaon case, the casteist spirit, the casteism, uh, has come out, has exploded, and we can clearly see that whosoever were in association with or agreement with the Yalgar Parishad program, the program which rather targeted Brahmanism, which targeted Peshwai, a symbol of Brahmanism, and Hindutva. These people are being targeted, and a message is being attempted to be sent that, look, we are not going to sit quiet, and now we are the people in power, and we'll take you to task if you speak against us. So yes, so this is what I would this is what how I would introduce the Algar Parishad case from the point of view of investigating agencies and how they are rated.
Mm, we'll have the question answer session after Sharib speaks. So I think we can start with Sharib's session.
Thank you, Nihal.
Sharib, your mic.
You can hear me now? Can you hear me? Yes. Okay. Okay.
Yes.
Yes. If I have to pick up on what Nihal is saying, what we see in the Elgar Parishad case, and investigative agency, whether it's the NIA or the ATS, what is happening these days? So I just like to give a little bit of some of the study that I have been doing. What Nihal was saying, that Elgar Parishad case is an experiment in methods of control. I think that's very right, because and Elgar Parishad specifically because it was a gathering against Peshwai, against Brahmanism, which hurts them politically. बाहर और आप जितना इधर उधर protest कीजिए, small things, human rights, this word, they don't get affected that much, but they get affected by the ways they were. And in a very similar fashion, NIA is an experiment at a certain point. So terrorism provisions, कानून में आए, they came into, so we had, I mean, पहले भी Disturbances Act था, and there were some other, but we had the first one as TADA, and then we had POTA, and of course then UAPA was amended. But you know, the difference between TADA, POTA, UAPA and NIA now is that what were experiments then are formalizations now. And this is how, in any way, policing power has increased, especially across the world after 9/11 and this whole security business. So TADA was a temporary law. Every 2 years, Parliament had to keep renewing it. And you had a special court in TADA, which was also temporary. Then the same thing happened in POTA, where you have POTA allowed something really advanced. It allowed police confessions. We catch somebody and then they confess to the police officer, and that can be the principal evidence on which they can be hanged, for example, or the punishment can be given. All of these very procedural and substantive, basically about violation of fundamental rights, your rights to protest, your rights to speak anything, to go out onto the streets, to be able to meet each other, to plan something. These are things that the state has always been suspicious about, and they could not have done it before. These, because they are enshrined. These are all experiments in how much you can actually push the people. So I would say that the NIA, and it's something that I'm saying in general as well, is the formalization of what started with POTA, and TADA and UAP. Pehle ye sab, these were temporary, argued as temporary provisions in Parliament, in the public. The courts were temporary. The public prosecutors were also similarly, all the people. It wasn't so sure. But now you have, in 2009, we have NIA coming. What is the NIA actually, if you think about it? Chidambaram announced it in Parliament. And this was announced as part of a four-pronged security architecture of India. We think that the BJP may be using it. Yes, the BJP is authoritarian. The BJP doesn't care about rights, doesn't care about anybody anyway, except its own people. So of course, in the BJP's hand, something that gives special powers becomes really deadly. And we see what's happening in Delhi. मतलब दिन को आप रात कर दें, ये जो तरीका है, ये हर जगह लोग करते हैं. This is absurd. What Nihal and we were talking about, that senior police officers are also a bit ashamed. This is so absurd that you're actually catching the people who protested against the violence, who are peace-loving people, not peace-loving, who are loving people. And you, over a period of 2 months, 3 months, you turn it around in such a fashion, you actually accuse them of orchestrating the riots. And this is absurd to the highest degree. Nobody, it will not stand in a court of law. It will not stand in a bloody bar. मतलब दारू पी के भी लोग बात करेंगे ना तो वो नहीं मानेगा कोई. But yes, terrorism provisions allow you to play this way. But it's not just the legal provisions. It's also about how far things have gone. To what extent police agencies or policing agencies in general can do things. So Chidambaram announced this as part of this larger security architecture that they were envisioning for India for the next 50 years and years. Part of it was the NAT grid, the intelligence grid, which mixes all databases, whether it's the police, the driving license, the Aadhaar card, the payments, the banks. मतलब आप कुछ भी करेंगे वो एक जगह जाएगा, which means कि if there is somebody suspicious, no matter where they are, what they do, they will be tracked. This was difficult for India, and this has great repercussions for student protests because it's a way of the state to track you, which was not possible before. Previously, if you had, let's say, your local police is suspicious against you, people don't get to know. You will still get your passport, and you have your passport, you'll be able to travel. This was all possible. This was all possible. Subterfuge was possible. Hiding was possible because not everything was centralized. Everything was shared. But NatGrid will make that impossible, though right now it's not completely in functioning yet. And government agencies, where I get my data from, are actually crying a lot about the fact that, this Bhima Koregaon is happening and this is happening and that. They actually turn it around to use it in an argument for more securitizing. Humko aur paisa do, humko aur police badhao. So actually the NIA is arguing that out of their entire capacity of 40,000, they only have 29. So there are 40,000 police officials within that. And also, for example, the IP has around the same number, 40,000 officials across the country. So what I'm saying is that, yes, these are experiments, and they depend on how much we resist it. They started tentatively with Tada Pota, took UAPA quota provisions into UAPA, it was still fine. But 2009, all these temporary provisions are now part of Indian law in a very different way. And so, for example, quota courts were different, but now NIA court is a permanent thing. NIA is an agency which will, jiska jo head, NIA ka jo executive head hai, is like a CEO. He's not responsible to the public, controlled directly by the Home Minister, which means that it's a different kind of power, which was not possible before. Also, NIA then appoints, NIA court mein judge kaun hai? Who will be the judge? The judge will be appointed by the NIA in consultation with the Chief Justice of the High Court of that state. Previously, the executive could never interfere with judicial functioning. Or judiciary kya hai? Judiciary is basically supposed to check executive action, whether they've been based on rights or not, or whether they're in violation or whatever. Judiciary is that arm of the society which has the responsibility to protect our fundamental rights. This was not making power very happy. Executives were not very happy. They wanted to be able to do things where judiciary ka say nahi hai. So like Nihal is saying, in the Elgar Parishad case, you have bail is of course denied. And these 12,000 charge sheets, 12,000 pages charge sheets. In Umar Khalid's case, they are saying some 1 million documents. I mean, what is this whole number game happening? This whole number game is basically because these are terror provisions where it says ki bail ke andar that a judge needs to be sure that prima facie the case is not true against this person before giving bail. No judge will be able to tell without actually conducting trial ki bhai, this person is innocent or guilty, which basically means you've taken away the power of the judiciary to set you free, at least temporarily, while the executive is trying you. That means a lot. Basically means that aapne judiciary ke kaan kaat diye. Ultimately, terrorism provisions, whether it's the NIA, whether it's any other, that's what it's doing. And it allows the executive to do whatever shit it wants. Kaan aapne sirf bail lene mein nahi kaata. It's not just about bail, but also about the fact that the very judge who will be sitting there and analyzing whether violations happened or not will be partly appointed by the NIA itself. Now, this is a complete different overturning of situation that we are witnessing. This I study anthropology and I look at things from sort of a global perspective. This is happening across the world because it was actually UN Security Council driven. It was driven in various, but everybody used it according to the way they want. So you had Advani in 2001 quoting the UN Security Council resolution to pass quota, even though they don't give two hoots about UN Security Council resolution. उनको मिलेगा अपने फायदे के लिए तो वो ले लेंगे. It's more like that. So यहाँ पे all the powers which were across the world, you see that authoritarianism is sort of increased. We have Bolsonaro in Brazil, we have in China Xi Jinping, and we have the US in such a state, and we have Boris Johnson. Everybody is very happy by saying, okay, you want to give me more power, I'll take it. And all these architectural, these security architectures are a birth of this sort of. So this 12,000 pages is basically, when you put this in front of the judge, no judge will dare to give you bail because the law says that you have to be sure before you can give him bail. And if you have a 12,000 page charge sheet, how are you sure till you read it all? And who has the time to read it all? And that's why I was saying that in Umar Khalid's case, or even in many of the Algar Parishad accused case, if you actually, as an anthropologist or as a lawyer, as a legal person, you sit down and write that case, it will be over in less than 1.5 pages. There is nothing there to write. You make an IS officer, you sit down, and you actually look at the facts, there's nothing there. So, of course, if you have to pull a magic trick, you need to produce enormous amounts of papers and this and that. So that's the first point. That this investigative agencies, the new ones that have come in, especially the NIA that has come in, it is a new thing. It's not an investigative agency. It's not a court. It's not a policing agency or just that. It's everything. It's an arm of the government which does not really listen to anybody. It is saying ki other thing, and the government is saying we're making this because there's terrorism in this society and we have to catch it. We need extraordinary powers to do that. But actually what they're doing is using that as a force of power. So we have so many, of course you give this kind of power to the BJP and you have all our best activists and best people landing up in prison. If everybody knows that there is no evidence against them at all. So that's point one. The other point that there is something else that the NIA is doing, and we need to understand that. Now that we have Mahesh Babu and we have so many other people in prison, we have Sharjeel Imam, we have Umar Khalid now, which finally the world has at least understood that even if you have a Muslim name, you could be very liberal. You know, you could be normal. So in Umar Khalid's example, we're seeing that actually. You see, Amitabh Ghosh, when was the last time Amitabh Ghosh ever opened his mouth? He's such a literary person in his own word. You have Amitabh Ghosh saying, no, Umar is nice. Chomsky to pehle se keh rahe. Because but that's not the case with Sharjeel Imam. That's not the case with a lot of other people. Because Muslims, at the end of the day, are permanently suspect for various reasons. Not just for the fact that uski lambi kahani hai, but at least we have one example where everybody's saying, no, this guy has been falsely accused. You've been putting him falsely. Because now it's very clear the way the Delhi police and the way the central government has investigated the Delhi riots, which is not really riots. I mean, you can call it pogrom, you can call it this, you can many fact findings have pointed out the fact that Hindus have died. Yes, Hindus have died. Yes, there were, of course, if there is violence, it cannot be completely one-sided. The street doesn't work like that. It still doesn't mean that it wasn't a pogrom. It still doesn't mean that it was pre-planned. So there's a difference between technically giving a judgment and politically understanding what actually happened. So now that we have this massive misuse of government's power especially to call people terrorists. Everybody who's saying anything being called terrorist, people are understanding that governments could do this wrongly or badly. But previously, that was not the case. And if you look at terrorism in general, from 2001, SIMI was banned, and you have now PFI being banned late into 2015, 16, 17. Um, the fact remains that political violence by Muslims or political violence in general has not happened so much, or at least by Muslims. If you leave out, if you leave out Kashmir, I'm talking in the context of the government charge that these guys are terrorists. If you look at all the major cases, apart from the Bombay blast cases after the riots, overall the government does not have evidence against Muslims to say that these guys have been terrorists. They have evidence to say that there were many people within them who lost faith in democracy. But they do not have evidence to say that these guys did political violence. And of course, when you look around, you will see how many over the last 30 years have lost faith in democracy. That's a whole different question. What I was going to say is that previously, if you look at how the investigative agencies function, especially the anti-terrorism prosecutions, you had what Manisha Sethi and what a lot of observers, including Harsh and some other people, were calling process as punishment. कि भाई इनको पकड़ा है, इनको पकड़ के जेल में ले जाएंगे, जेल में मारेंगे, जिंदगी खराब करेंगे, यही पर्पस है, क्योंकि ये मुसलमान हैं, या ये लेफ्ट विंग हैं, या ये दलित हैं, या various other things. Process as punishment was at one point the central charge, but now with the NIA coming in, and after 15 years of BJP prosecutions of Muslims and Dalits as terrorists, the evidence is not there to say that these guys actually did it. Not a single case against Simi has been proved. Not a single case in all the major blast cases, apart from the Gateway of India, has been able to prove. So, at the very senior level of government, at the level of conversation internationally as well, the government of India does not have evidence to say that there's so many Muslims we have and they're actually disloyal or they are anti-national. They don't have the evidence. The Prime Minister himself, and you see these governmental reports, government agency reports, military reports I was looking at, and it's saying that we have information of about 80 people from India who were inclined to join the ISIS. And the report itself says that compared to the enormous Muslim population of India, this is a minuscule number. It is an irrelevant number. The evidence actually suggests that Indian Muslims, or Indian Dalits for that matter, have been very, very peaceful in spite of being provoked massively. That is the assessment of the evidence. But so based on that, what has happened is now the NIA actually doesn't want to take you in. I'm not talking of these activist cases. In activist cases, the whole point is to decapacitate you. The point is to keep you in prison for a long time. The point is that they don't make you work. The point is to make an example of it. But I'm saying of all the major cases. So I was looking at parliamentary debates, and they're saying that till March 2020, the NIA has filed charge sheets in 319 cases over the last 10 years of its function, in which judgment has been delivered in 62, of which 56 have been convictions. So that is 90% convictions. Never have we ever had terrorism convictions to this degree. UAPA conviction rates was less than 2%. Tata conviction rate was actually 0.24%. Because most of these prosecutions were politically motivated, whether in the Punjab or whether in the Northeast and all of that. But now how is this figure changing? Completely, which is principally what I'm investigating as well. This is changing because they are using various methods to keep you, to get you convicted. Pehle ye tha, they want to keep you in prison. 5 years, 7 years, Sessions Court will convict you, High Court will maybe confirm Sessions Court's decision, but Supreme Court may finally, they will actually be able to see that there was no evidence. And there was complete violations, they'll acquit you. Which is why we had so many people coming out after 10 years, 12 years, 14 years, 15 years. Now they realize that the evidence is not working. So now they don't want to keep you in prison in general. They actually want the numbers. So now what we have is plea of guilty coming in very much. So now a lot of people being arrested, they're being kept in prison for long duration, for example, 5 years, 7 years, and trial hasn't moved at all. And then they are told internally, chukke se, ki, you accept your guilt and we will give you minimum punishment, which is 5 years, which is what you have already served, and now we'll let you. Now what is happening is, from an accused point of view, from a defense lawyer point of view, all of this is very good. You get to go home, which was never possible before. But now convictions have jumped to 90%. Which means what exactly? Which means that in 10 years, India will be able to show that they have so many terrorists in here, which will be further adding to the kind of secularization, this international national architecture of violence that they have created, which we see in the case of all our activists, all our people being put in prison. There's a complete clampdown on protests at this time, and it is this legal structure that's helping that. So, yes, thank you. I think that's just a few thoughts.
Hello. Thank you, Sharib and Nihalsing. The floor is now open for questions to both the speakers. You can either unmute yourself and ask the question or ask in the chat room. While asking in the chat room, please make sure that the question can be seen by everyone and not a private question.
Sharib bhai, in the meantime,
Ji.
I just wanted to remind you of preamble of UAPA Act as amended in 2004. Within they admit that the earlier anti-terror law was so misused and it was so politically used by the earlier government that they find no other way but to repeal the earlier law or let it lapse. And again, the same medicine is being used. And what was promised at that point of time was there would be checks and balances, and there would be sanction provision be made very stringent, this and that. And what we see at the end of the day is it is just being used against people.
Yeah, I mean, Boto, that was a way of getting votes as well, no? This whole quota ka abolition, because the whole movement started, Congress wanted Muslim support. And they did that, and they wrote it in that preamble. 6 months later, they take the UAPA, the entire terrorism provisions of quota, and they put it into UAPA.
That's right. And another thing, recently, when Chidambaram had come to Nagpur, he confessed, or rather, he apologized that he prosecuted Sai Baba, he incarcerated Arun Pereira and Vernon Gonzalez and these people, and he's realizing importance of these people when they are on the other side of the power. So a late realization, which is of course of no use.
Yeah. And the problem with these people who, especially Chidambaram, is a whole different kind of person. He must have said that for Sai Baba, and I heard something similar for Abdul Nasir Madani. I met the investigating officer, and I asked him, what is it really with Abdul Nasir Madani? And he said that it's a sad case over. So, I mean, after retirement, some of these things become very easy to say, but when these guys are in power, then they do stuff. NIA is actually becoming very scary, Nihal bhai. In general, of course, not just for the fact that they're going after all activists, but in general for overall Muslims and what is coming out in terms of data, in terms of what they are arguing everywhere quietly. They are, this whole plea of guilty business is very scary, and it's happening across the country. So now every year there are about 1,000 terrorists coming out from the country, saying that now we have this, every year we have 500 or 1,000 terrorists. That's massive, and it will have longer repercussions, not just on Muslims but also terrorism, activism in general.
Yes, yes, yes. As you rightly said, that if a person foresees that he's going to be in jail for next 10 years fighting the case, wasting all his resources, money, family, and everything, then anyone will prefer to, face a sentence of 5 years or 7 years and then get rid of everything. But it's a very sad situation. At the same time, the legal fraternity has failed to provide enough support to such type of people.
Mm.
Wakalat has become dhanda. It was already always a dhanda, no doubt about it. But then it has become more of a dhanda than it was earlier, where people are only concerned with the fees and not with the due process, not with the law. Uh,
Yeah,
they used to be one generation, or they used to be a set of people who would equally value these things and not just do the dhanda of कुछ भी
yeah.
केस आए मैं पैसा बनाऊंगा मैं अपना जीऊंगा.
Mm.
That was not there so much as I
which
get
is
to hear from
which is
others.
where the value of civil liberties movement come in. You see our Mr. Surendra Gadling. You see, I mean, the importance of Surendra Gadling is that political conviction, that sense of movement building. You will never have him agree to this kind of a tactic. But what I'm studying is that NIA tried to bring plea bargaining officially in the law in 2018. But I'm sure that there was resistance from the judiciary internally, and they weren't able to do that because, especially in very high-profile cases, terrorism cases, you cannot have plea bargaining, like in the US. So now they are actually doing that under the table, and it's only with the cooperation of the defense lawyer that you can do something like this. So what I'm noticing is every city, every town, within Muslims particularly, you have one person who is disconnected from the community, disconnected from the movement, disconnected from the idea of civil liberties, who is these lawyers. But he may have a big beard. He is disconnected from everything but dadi badi. But he is the one who is now thinking, ki, of course, it's a good deal, you take it. Because they're all fragmented.
Yes. So this time when these Kabir Kala Manch activists were arrested and they were told to give confessional statement implicating people, this time we decided that we'll take them to task. We will not face this injustice and we'll bring it on the record. So I went to the judge. We filed the complaint in writing that look, these people were forced, and because they refused, they have been arrested. This is malified exercise of powers, wrongful arrest, and all. And you please set him at liberty forthwith. Of course, it was not going to happen, but the least expectation was that the judge will record their statement, which he's bound to do under the law. He's bound to ask the accused person if he has any complaint or grievance against the police. Now, very interestingly, after I put that concern to the judge, judge asked these people, कि तुम्हारा कोई complaint है क्या इनके पुलिस के खिलाफ? So they started saying this, हाँ सर इन्होंने हमको statement देने को बोला और बोला कि नहीं दोगे तो जेल में डाल देंगे. The judge refuses to record that statement, and he passes an order saying that the tenor of their statement is that they were forced to give 164 statement, and because this does not amount to ill treatment, and given that I'm only supposed to inquire into ill treatment, that is physical or bodily assault, I will not record that statement. So this is the extent to which the hostility exists. uh, as in, you are not performing your duty and you have boldness enough to say, be
Yeah,
it however
yeah,
stupid, that police forcing you is no ill treatment. What happens to the
yeah,
perjury? You are basically, if you're forcing that person, you're telling that person to commit act of perjury. You are
yeah,
telling that person to give false statement, thereby to commit offense. The person who is forcing is committing offense under section 195A, which is 7 years punishment and cognizable offense. What happens to that? So
yeah,
everything on that side is so easily and blatantly ignored, that you start to feel extremely disgruntled and agitated, and then um, Then there comes a situation where, at least I lose my temper. I start shouting. I
Mm,
start being rude to the judge, and then they get a chance to say that, look, these lawyers, they are troublemakers. They come and they create chaos.
mm,
So in both ways, we have to be. As one thing we have learned hard ways is that, uh, please be dispassionate, learn what is going to happen out of this, and be very strategic uh,
mm.
in dealing with the case. So at least somewhere down the in the future, at least we'll be able to show these documents to the coming generations and say that, look,
Yeah, yeah.
uh, this is how we
And
were treated.
and I am seeing that wherever there have been there has been a history of civil liberties movement, because lawyers have always been attached to civil liberty. I think there the situation is better. So you have Maharashtra, Mumbai, mein, they are not able to do this whole plea of guilty business with Muslim accused, because you have the Jamiyat there, you had Shahid there, you have Aab Khan and many other people. Basic sense is all right. They have a sense of what is happening. Similarly, in other places, jahan pe history raha hai, it's all right. But in something as fragmented as Delhi, or even places in Karnataka or places elsewhere, jiska koi ata pata nahi hai, that's where it's all coming in. That's where it's the massive problem.
That's very
Hi,
true.
hello,
Sorry, Sidra, you have nobody's asked a question or what?
hello, hello.
You're
Yes,
muted,
yes.
Sidra.
One person is asking question. After
Yes.
Yeah, actually, this NIA is claimed to be an investigative agency made following the structure of the FBI and all. So FBI is has been notorious for a long time for creating something called a preemptive terror prosecution. That is, they themselves act as catalysts or provocators who plant themselves into some otherwise who otherwise will be very peace loving, or who otherwise living in a normal life, they will be induced for doing some minor crimes and then create a narrative, and or they can get arrested on the way of doing some minor crimes. So is there evidence that NIA is also following this methodology other than just fabricating cases, or uh,
Mm,
what is their what is their actually method of
mm,
creating cases?
mm,
That is one question. The second one is, actually in most of the cases, at least in some of the cases we followed in Kerala, we found
mm.
that there is actually always a, a pardoned witness created. They arrest some people, and one of them will be, even in the recent case they tried with in one of the Maoist cases, accused cases, they tried this but failed because they were refusing to be one of the pardoned witness. So in many cases we see this pattern that one of them is converted to be a witness, and then they they are acting as witness against other accused. So in most of the maybe the convicted cases, this has been a pattern that we can see. So so can you just elaborate on this kind of their modus of operandi, like how they're actually getting these convictions, like other than the faking evidences like this.
Nehal bhai, you want to take it?
Uh, yes. So let's see this modus of making a person approver. Uh, is something I think goes back to 93 blast cases,
Yes.
where
Raghuvanshi.
Ujwal Nikam,
Yes, Raghuvanshi
yes,
and Nika.
Raghuvanshi and Nikam, they basically found this to be easiest way of proving the guilt. So there is a person who makes incriminating statements saying that, yes, this person was with me, that person was with me. He was preparing bombs. That person went to plant the bomb, and he's implicating himself also, and he's implicating others. And then that statement is taken as gospel truth. Whereas in other cases, you will see the different rationality applying. Here it is taken as gospel truth, and then the person is doomed for that one thing. which we later on come to know that that person was offered this thing or that thing. I know of a person who who in a Pune's case was told to confess that he's the one who executed the bomb blast, and he'll be given 25 lakh rupees right then and there, and remaining amount would be dispatched to his house, and in 3 months' time he will be out. Uh, uh, Somehow that fellow was in touch with some of the activists. He called them, he spoke to them, he asked them, what do I do? It's such a big amount. I can take that amount, spend a couple of months in jail, and then later on I'll have a happy go easy life. But he was convinced otherwise, and we see that other persons who were put in that bomb blast case are now struggling to even come out. We don't know if they were similarly given amount or something. So this pattern has been there all across in Maoist cases, or say in Naxal cases. What they do is they have surrendered people as their stock witnesses or their approvers. So in this one Elgar Parishad case, there is one witness who they claim to be their star witness. This person has given three statements before three different courts, or three before different places as such, of a same incidents, and every time his statement improves so well that in every new case he implicates the new accused person, and it is on basis of such evidence that they are in jail. Second thing that we also need to look at is not only this tactic of preparing, or creating some approval, but is of playing with one of the most vulnerable thing that everyone is dependent on, which is our mobile phones or our computers, in which anyone can get into with you know there's some noise around. So it's basically entering into your computer, and then planting or meddling with certain things and then putting stuffs in it. We know for a reason that Surendra Gadlin's computer, we as a junior used to have access to. His family had access to, and we knew to what extent Gadling has understanding of computer. Even when if he buys a new instrument, he would give it to us to set it up for him. So this bare understanding of technology, and that person's computer contains these incriminating articles, and that too kept on desktop, is something that doesn't um, inspire faith. So what needs to be seen is, we also need to be very careful with respect to our systems, our computers, uh, and then also I would say the tendency of making people approve, then also creating false evidences, then again the issue of plea bargaining, and then using surrendered persons as witnesses is the only, or the I would say that is the only method, or that is the only thing that is available with them, because they cannot fight ideologically, they cannot fight legally, they cannot curtail you by going by the books, because they know that everything is legal, and what they are trying to create is some fabrication. So uh, that is happening, that is going to happen, and that is bound to happen in coming times. I think we can also look back in history, and Bhagat Singh's one of the friend was made to depose against him. So that has been going on. That is something that this system will have. But as it was also said that FBI and NIA are somehow similar organizations trying to adopt the same methodology. I would completely agree. Yes, that is what they are trying to do. The NIA, though, is completely unconstitutional. It is under challenge of the High Court and Supreme Court, and it is in uh, violation of the what we say federal structure, or the constitutional machinery, constitutional separation of powers. Uh, it is going to gain strength over a period of time, thanks to the data that they are trying to create as to how they have effectively fought terrorism and so-called Naxalism and so-called everything. And as we can also see that the NIA is completely occupied by castes and criminal people, and that is something that fulfills the necessity of the current government. So yes, these are few tactics and things that we need to be aware of, and uh, the only method I feel is to have uh, our activists turned into lawyers, as it used to be in the old times, and have them be on the battlefield. I think Sharif will like to add more to this.
Yes, I completely agree, Nihal bhai. On Aftab Saab's other question, uh, yes, you're right that the central method that the FBI had was implanting within Muslim communities in the US, um, people, their own agents, Maulanas who would travel from outside or something, to instigate very impressionable young Muslim men, or maybe sometimes even women. I think that method came from, emerged from the fact that the US was a melting pot. There was so much of people coming in and going. Because it was also the power center. You had, people from India, everybody's traveling to the US. So in a mosque, you have a new imam coming and okay, this imam is Libyan, for example, or Syrian or Pakistani. Then people are used to people coming in and going out. So I think they were able to do that there. And we're also, to the point, like you say, that 90% of the convictions that they received of young Muslim men who could have done something or were about to do something, it was proved that they wouldn't have reached here hadn't the FBI own agent wasn't critical to that. Like, this guy would have probably, expressed a bit of anger and continued his studies had the FBI's role not been critical in him becoming a terrorist. In India, I have not heard something similar. Though what has happened is that there's a massive proliferation of surveillance within Muslim areas, at least in North India, because Kerala is a slightly different world. I'm not so sure what happens in Kerala, and you would know better. But I know that, for example, I'm from Calcutta and various other, whether it's the madrasas or it's the mosques, they were not so heavily surveilled before. And officers, IB recruited a lot of people from Muslim areas, and they would now routinely go into the mosque and report back. What I never heard is that an IB person or an agent trying to instigate violence. Maybe one or two small cases. My hunch says that they could have tried that in Kerala, uh, especially in that Malappuram region, um, whether relating to around PFI cadres or around what was the other thing? In general, people who, especially because there were people from Kerala who the ISIS issues, they may have tried that, but maybe you know better there.
Yeah, in the many of the ISIS recruitment case, there were this accusation that they were actually instigated by some people. So I think it can be an agent of NIA or IP or somebody else. But yeah, um, that is it. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have any more questions? There are none in the chat room. If anybody wants to ask.
We have casted a spell of silence, it seems. Huh?
Actually, at the moment, Sharif bhai, one of the gravest of the crime and gravest of the seditious act is to question. So everyone is being cautious, I think.
Yeah. And I'm sure there
If
is some
anybody
way that
would
they are
like to add to
listening
the
into this
discussion.
conversation. Sorry.
No, continue.
No. I was saying that they may be listening to this conversation, but maybe it helps in educating them.
No, definitely they are listening. Definitely they have infiltrated everywhere, and that is my personal experience. We've been experiencing this since past 2.5 years. That even your legal strategies, your petitions are readily available with them in advance, and they are preparing their defense already. That we have seen, but they watching this and recording this and keeping it to themselves really. Um, Makes me afraid no more, because whatever we are doing is doing in openly and in legal parameters. Now it is for them to fabricate and show how it is illegal. So
Mm.
good luck to them.
Since there are no new questions in the chat room and nobody has volunteered for any more questions or continuation of the discussion, we'll conclude the session for today. On behalf of Fraternity Movement Delhi University, we thank both the speakers, Sharib and Nihalsing, for your time.
Thank you, Fraternity Movement, for inviting me. And I think I can say that for Nihal as well. Somebody is
Sorry.
saying something.
Oh.
Whatever. Actually, I was listening to this, and as Nihal sir said that they are probably educating themselves and just listening. I just wanted to just get a gist of what would you say to this? Like the government, not just this India's Modi ji's government, but since they have seems like they have derived these ideas from the West to of treating the political dissent as terrorism. मतलब जो बोलेगा वही terrorist है तू बोले क्यों रहा है isn't it like that? And also at times there are it's like beach where we see that there is the question the policies and these acts of detention, preventive detention, and all the acts, we see that it's being asked कि they should be scrapped. But still, मतलब एक जाता है तो उसी को refine बढ़िया बना के दूसरा आ जाता है. So, like, would you say something about it? Also, I'm not able to put it in a very good way because I don't know what to say. So.
No, I got your question. No, it's a very nice, it's a very good thing to think about. One, I mean, we study this in anthropology or in general, you call this the transnationalization of legal systems. And there is a role that the UN and some other bodies play in that. So, for example, if you have a UN Security Council resolution, like the one you had in 2001, saying that every country needs to adopt terrorism laws, every country is bound technically. They will have to answer in the UN if they don't do that, because it's a Security Council binding resolution. Of course, if you don't do that, it will depend. That's a different matter. Ki tumse puchega kaun. But I think a lot of these things get adopted because it's convenient and everybody, all power wants it. To say ki because America did this and then everybody adopted it won't be right in my opinion, because the UN says many things, America also says many things. We only take the things we want to take. It doesn't mean that we take the things we don't want to take. So yes, that is one thing. And the other is modern states, I feel, have gone beyond the point where the power to preventively detain people, you can take away from the state. I think it's far beyond now. It will need a revolution to actually say nahi, rights are so important that even though you may suspect somebody, even though somebody may be a terrorist, even though somebody may be something else, you cannot, preventively detain them. These were in the early, I mean, modern nations are not very old. These were things that used to scare people at one point in the 90s, in the 80s. at the very early stages of modern nationalism. But now we've just gone way too far to say, to even argue, I mean, of course, argument is necessary because it serves a purpose, but I don't think it's going to go anywhere. So the only thing I think that neither preventive detention powers are going to go away, nor surveillance powers are going to go away. They're only going to increase further. Like Nihal is saying, like we all know that no matter what we do, if we use modern forms of communication, somehow it's getting recorded somewhere. People, if they want to really see it, they will see it. Which also means, like the Hong Kong protest told us and showed us, that student protests specifically and protests in general need to upgrade themselves. And this is a massive task we need to do. There's just no way around being very vigilant, using the best tools, using the most secure tools. It is true that if you actually use secure tools, it will take a lot of effort for somebody to reach it. So अब दुनिया आगे निकल चुकी है और students हो या कोई भी हो या activist हो, we will all need to function in a very vigilant and technically qualified manner. There is no way around.
That was very well ended. Thank you.
I would just
Thank you.
add one more thing, which is my perspective. I don't have much of study on international situations or situation in other countries. But sometimes I feel that other countries are taking cue from India. Uh, there are more examples in India than I think anywhere else as to how those people who were struggling for freedom were called terrorists. Uh, and one of the first anti-terror law, as they would call, or the security legislation that came into being is Indian Penal Code, uh, which then was again complemented with Criminal Tribes Act, more particular and special law, and so on and so forth to the date where we have UAPA. And as also Sharif said, detention powers are very well given in the constitution itself. It only puts a restriction on it as to how you should do it, in what manners you will do it. So apart from that, dealing with the situation, or how you are going to tackle with the so-called criminals, or so-called uncomfortable individuals who are problem to the current government. I think starting from 1857 or 1871, India has been setting out examples, showing other world as to how to do it. Of course, the hands were of Britishers, but then uh, the executors and planners were Indian, who took every effort to ensure that things work in favor of Britishers, and that's how we remained under so-called slavery till 1947. But even in subsequent time, we'll see that Unlawful Activities Prevention Act was enacted in 1967. Even prior to that, there was a law, and as I said, Constitution itself creates a provision, or rather an exception, for the right of association or freedom of movement. So this is there inbuilt in any government, and it is going to be there like this only. It although it will the degree of respecting it, or being liberal or being conservative, will depend on how cautious the society is, how concerned the society is, and how do they react to the situation. A dead society is fodder for king, they say, and presently that is precisely what is happening. They have divided the communities, and they are taking advantage of it. So that is where I think the thing comes from. The creation of this fiction called terrorism, creation of this fiction called extremism and things, or rather distinguishing between mainstream and upstream of mainstream life and upstream life, is something that we are not trying to understand, or trying to reflect upon, and that is precisely what is giving them opportunities to create more and more laws, and try and curtail our liberties with time.
Thank you. We have two questions in the chat box. One from Sharik and Anshi. I think Sharik's question is almost answered already. Do you want me to read it out?
Yes.
No, I'm seeing it.
Okay.
So I could try and sum it up. One is, I mean, what is the way forward? And I don't know, of course, but the things that I am thinking. The point that you were saying that if you look at the Indian freedom movement, and if you look at the way these laws were used, developed, yes, India is a shining example that there are many new things that took place here. That had to do because of the nature of this post-colony. I don't think there was any other country which had such a strong and robust civil society, also as educated, like we had during the freedom movement. Which is why the British had to use methods, very sophisticated methods. What the British and the French used in Africa were not so sophisticated, they were absolutely brutal. But in India, they used these terror laws. You see the signs of very late modern democracy you see in early colonial periods being used by the British. That because it had to do with the kind of opposition they were facing, is what I feel. Which is also tells us something for now. What is the way forward? I was thinking that, during the emergency when these things were happening, and things had sort of gone slightly beyond what we had experienced till now under the BJP rule. In certain ways, not in certain other ways. Students were never violated in this fashion. Indira Gandhi was forced to, resign. What's his name? Sitaram Yechuri was the president of the JNU. And Indira Gandhi, at the height of her dictatorship during the emergency, came there, and there was a strong protest. And she actually came out of the car and she spoke to Yechuri, and he asked, as speaker of the larger movement, that you should resign from being the VC of the university, and she did. She did resign. Of course, it doesn't mean that she resigned from being the authoritarian leader of the country, but she had that much understanding कि student बच्चा लोग बोल रहा है ना तो हम VC, I will leave the VC post. I am anyway the dictator of it. This government doesn't even have that nuance. But what I feel, what I was thinking is that students and young people like us would have been feeling in the same way, like we are feeling right now. कि सब कुछ खत्म हो गया. And, so much shit is happening. But I think things have a way of bouncing back. After the emergency, you see the judiciary sort of bent so much during the emergency. And that famous word, they were asked to crawl and they bent completely. And we have those judgments. But just after that, the judiciary did try to recover. And you have 10 to 15 years of a lot of judicial activism, actually, trying to recover its lost pace, I would say, at least the Indian Supreme Court. But so I don't know how it feels now. I think that things could have a way of bouncing back. We just need to continue doing what we do, what we have always done, and do it in a better way.
I would completely agree with what Sharif has said, but I would also like to add that uh, झूठ की झूठ की दुनिया अंधेरी में ही रहती है, and sunlight is the best disinfectant in these times. So we have to have a narrative placing forth the truth before people. We need to fight back very forcibly, very strongly, and knowing our things well. It cannot be that we will resort to uh, violence to prove a point, because that is the point that then that is what they want. They want you to breach a particular line, cross a particular line, so that they will hop on you and target you. So we need to ensure that while we don't cross that line, we keep exposing them, we keep showing them to people as to how they are trying to create a false narrative, and we need to keep forging alliances. I would say after Yalgar Parishad and after Bhima Koregaon riots, uh, the outcome of that 1 day program, not even 1 day program, half a day program, was that to protest against the attacks on Dalits in Pune, there was a Bandh called on 3rd of January, wherein every political organization, every social organization was on street except BJP and RSS people who were hiding their faces. So we need that kind of unity where these people will not be able to step out. And yes, we all have been friends in pain, and I think time is that we need to be uh, more vocal, more clear, and more closer to our friends in all these bad times. And I am hopeful situation is going to change. It is going to change for good. This tyranny, this dictatorship will not last for long. Time and again, history has shown that dictators have tried to suppress people, but people have also fought back, and people have gained their freedom. So we will
हाँ
definitely,
चलेगा नहीं.
as an India, will definitely lead by example, and we will conquer it. I'm hopeful. I'm really very hopeful.
निहाल गडलिंग भाई के साथ आप भी गीत विद गाना शुरू किए कि नहीं?
एक्चुअली हम कोरस में थे ना, तो हम पीछे से उनके गाने को बेसुरा करते थे, तो
नहीं तो
उनकी
आज हम
एफर्ट
एक
से
गीत
हमें
के साथ खत्म कर सकते हैं.
नहीं, एक्चुअली मुझे गीत वगैरह तो नहीं आते हैं, बट एक 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 दोहा है, दोहा नहीं, एक पंक्ति है संत तुकाराम की मराठी में, तो उसका मीनिंग बताऊंगा. वो बोलता है, बोलते हैं, मेना हुनी मऊ आम्ही विष्णुदास, कठीण वज्रासही भेदू ऐसे, भले तरी देऊ कासेची लंगोटी, नाठाळाच्या माठात देऊ काठी. So it says we are very soft, we are soft like that what is candle made of. We are very soft in that way, but we are very harsh. We are very strong also when it comes to breaking something. If you ask us, we are ready to give you our bare clothing also. But when it comes to the person who's trying to take disadvantage of things, we will definitely pick up our stick and break his head. So that is the principle Tukaram had laid down at that point of time. I think more need of that in these times.
I think there's one more question. And she's asking about any platforms, online or otherwise, where information regarding these violations of basic human rights can be found. Any readings, journals,
I think
I
Quill
don't know.
Foundation has
research
documented.
platforms.
Quill Foundation has been very aggressively documenting all these things.
Yeah, I mean,
I think it is
this is
up
the
there
age of
on their
information.
website as
There's
well.
just stuffed, everything
Sharib will
is
correct me.
stuffed with information. We've contributed our part. Everybody's contributed our part. It's a question of where to find them all.
No, I think it is on Quill's this thing, no platform. No.
I mean, we brought out reports and this and that, and वो है Citizens Against Hate का भी है. But yeah, maybe I could send it to you. Whatever we know, I know a little bit. I could send it to you, Sidra, and maybe you could share it with him.
Hopefully. It's almost 10 o'clock here in India. So I think we can conclude the session. Further questions, I think me or Nida can direct it to Sharib or Nihal, and we can hopefully continue the discussion.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
once
you.
again.
Nihal bhai, मिलते हैं.
Jai Bhim.
Jai Bhim.